Okay, so haven't got to play much, but I made some updates to POBs and everything else for the Infinite Delve, which is way more interesting for me right now. So let's talk through that and what the plan is and what some of the accommodations are going to be to make this work well. We're going to cover a couple things. We're going to cover some skill selections, why some of the skill selections were made, and some of the ideas behind Delve and Infinite Delve primarily. Infinite Delve is unique in that you don't have a crafting bench. And this means that your loot to a large degree comes from the ground. You may have fossils and stuff to craft some of it, and in the end game everything might be crafted. But for the first few days, it's pretty much whatever you pick up from the ground, whatever you throw essences on. And what we want to be able to do is to leverage as many mods as possible. Right? When it comes to prefixes and suffixes, we want to be able to, on every slot we have as many good prefixes as suffixes, and especially considering it on the belt, we're kind of counting on having a 1 affix belt if we want the 20% reduced charges used, which is attainable, right? It's at a level 4 mod. You're gonna drop some of them, and if nothing else, you can just grab a really low item level belt and then force the item that way. A rare level 4 belt is like a 25% chance of rolling the mod, and then getting the perfect one, of course, means that you have a 2.5% chance. But again, 100 tries isn't that bad. But with that in mind, let's go and take a quick look at the POB and the plan around that. Let me make sure I switch. Hey, the switching worked. Sort of. Alright. So this is our start. We're going to take out the exit on the south. And the reason for that is that a lot of this is projectile damage, and at some point we're going to go into Ignite. So we're taking the exit on the south. It gives us some more evasion. It gives us a little bit of life. It gives us some resists, which are going to be at a premium. And then we bolt down here. We pick up Avatar of the Hunt, and we pick up Elemental Equilibrium, and we're going to go Elemental Hit. This is just being pragmatic. Right? The reason we're going Elemental Hit is 1, we have access to the Elemental Equilibrium node, which is amazing. It scales without us having to change our gear, which is amazing. It works relatively well with our starter bow, presumably, which is going to be pretty good. And we're going to have the ability to use Trinity support, which is a really good support early on if you're supporting it anyway. And it's not bad at Ignite. Right? It has a 50% chance to ignite at top level, but even at the lower level, it's still going to be a higher chance to ignite than Burning Arrow. Granted, only 1 in 3 attacks will deal fire damage, but it's still a decent chance to ignite, and we don't need more than 1 ignite up on an enemy initially. After this, we're going to start planning for Ignite proliferation. So we're starting to pick up more nodes. We're going to pick up more bow nodes up here, elemental damage node, chance to ignite over here, chance to ignite over here. This burning brutality node, because it's just a bunch of damage over time. If we can, the 20% damage over time multiplier and minus 30 fire resist. This is a bit of a risky node. And then these nodes over here for increased ailments. Movement speed, we also pick up some movement speed up here, and then this is just for quality of life with some leech. This is around level 38 where you should get Ignite Proliferation, and we can start to look at Ignite Proliferation as a playstyle. Maybe at that point you're able to run 2 4-links, we'll see, but it might still be running Elemental Hit with Ignite Proliferation at this point, or just Elemental Hit. And just relying on more damage output from our ignites. And then around 75, we start picking up some life wheels. We start prepping our flask nodes up here. Pick up this whole life wheel, this life wheel, more fire damage. We are not picking up iron reflexes. We're not going to do that until we get to kind of the end state, where we're going to pick up iron reflexes. We're going to start picking up some crit nodes. We pick up the crit damage here. We pick up perfect agony, and this also allows us to have 30% reduced extra damage from criticals here and here. So that combination together should allow us to run a lot of mods. From our Ascendancy, maybe you want to pick up Nature's Adrenaline first for the movement speed and attack speed, because it just has a high premium early on. Then you end up with Nature's Boon, you go into Master Alchemist, and then at the end we're going to pick up Master Surgeon. And the idea is we pick this up at like 75 for free, right? If it's the same as last time. And if that is the case, then, you know, that's good enough. It's more valuable to pick up Master Alchemist just for the chance to freeze, shock, and ignite. It should give us pretty much ailment immunity-ish, right? Shocking ground will kill us, but a lot of the other tanks will not, which is good. We don't have Corrupting Blood as a thing in the mine, but bleeds can be. So again, this can help us out as well, but it's mainly to recover 6% of life when you use a flask. And then when we can get level 80 flasks, we're going to roll the mod that allows us to gain flask charges when we're being hit. We're going to roll either flask charges used when full or flask used when adjacent flask is used, and then put it next to a flask that is used when full, and make our math so that we can actually use our flask whenever we are being hit, on every single hit. At that point we also pick up chance to cover enemies in ash when we're being hit, and we are gaining endurance charges when we're being hit. So a lot of tankiness that comes out of that mechanic. It plays nice together. We do have to have crits regularly for the math to work out on those charges. When we have to have crits regularly, well then we can assume one of our recent crits is from a ignite. We can then look at Perfect Agony to get some more damage, and to look at Dire Torment for, again, more damage. Because we have these damage over time multipliers from ailments from critical strikes. So yeah, that is the core concept behind this. Some of these nodes are a little weak. Right? This is crit chance, crit multi. So this crit multi is 12%. Only half of that is going to apply to our ignite. But because we're going to have a relatively low chance on the crits, we can assume that the ignite that is dealing the damage came from a crit, right? So we're effectively counting on applying enough good ignites to have these high multiplier ignites out there. Okay, so let's switch over to this. Is this gonna work? Haha! Alright, so this is a huge assumption that's going to be the same as last league. But, you know, I don't think there are any issues with it, so I assume these are just the same items. This is from last time. This is 2020, down there. Might be wrong. Okay, if we go Elemental Hit. 100% increased physical damage. Useless. 10% increased attack speed. Well, that's good, and it's a 1.5 attack speed base bow, which is good. Right, so there's a lot of goodness in there. Accuracy rating, can't complain about that. Projectiles return from your final target. Super clunky to use. But, you know, it doesn't hurt. This is not an unusable bow for Elemental Hit. We have the Quiver. The Quiver gives us some physical damage, useless for Elemental Hit. Elemental Resists. Yay. 50% increased duration of elemental ailments. Again, this is nice when you don't have a high chance to ignite and you only apply ignites once every X number of hits. Possibly be right with elemental hit. So these longer duration ignites might actually be really good. 10% chance to freeze, shock, and ignite. Really good. 25% of weapon physical damage as extra damage from a random element. Well, this is divided by 3, so it's like 7% of this number. It's like a couple of points. This is useless. But elemental hit can scale for quite a while. So why are we going elemental hit here versus burning arrow, which we're going to do later on? Well, the reason for that is, for a large part, 25% chance to ignite enemies. And you have to ignite them twice to get a good ignite. That's awful. but you have effectiveness of added damage, right? This is huge. Because elemental hit has 0. Well, it has 100%, right? So half of this effectively. Whereas with elemental hit, we have 30 to 49% chance to free shock and ignite. You have the 10% more for ailments. So if your first hit isn't a ignite, and your second hit isn't something that can ignite, well, there's a good chance you may have 20% more damage. That's pretty good. 80% more radius against enemies affected by an ailment of the chosen elements. Again, this is really going to be important when we're dealing with like bosses and stuff like that, and with ads, which is something that helps us quite a bit in Delve. Right? You might be plugging away at a rare for a little bit, and this might get us to the point where we have a little bit of clear for free out of the skill. But most importantly, this thing out of the box just does 480 to 890 fire damage at the top end. Whereas our Burning Arrow is 200 to 300 and you have to ignite them twice. Yeah, this is just painful. We either need a lot of attack speed, we need a lot of ability to ignite. All of this requires investment. We're not going to get it until like level 40, level 50 before the skill is going to start feeling good. It may still be okay versus some bosses if you find a good bow, but with elemental hit we don't have to find a good bow. So yeah, and I may have switched into Foul Burning Arrow at some point. Okay, so this is why we take elemental hit for leveling and getting to depth, you know, the level 80 mobs to get our flasks, and then we're going to start gearing up to the point where we can switch to Burning Arrow. Alright, Foul Burning Arrow. It's the same damage as Burning Arrow, right? 200 to 300. It has a little bit higher multiplier. Oh, okay, 50% higher multiplier thereabouts. It pierces 3 targets. Yay. Can't be evaded. 50% chance to ignite. I mean, yay. This is not really worth throwing a large number of Val Orbs against initially. I would keep Val Orbs for the chest encounters in the mines to hopefully get a 6 link. Right, if you have like a level 60 chest encounter, roll the chest, throw a Val Orb on it, it makes items corrupted, or gives them a chance to be corrupted. That might be a really good way to score yourself a 6 link. And one of the nice things about this build, along with our ability to use a lot of affixes, is we have the ability to use a lot of different sport gems. Alright, so let's get rid of this. First off, Deadly Ailments. It's a green one, 44% more, less damage with hits, who cares? Like, the hits are not going to matter in the end, we're really going to count on our ignites. And because we're counting on our ignites, we can ignore chilling ground. We can ignore things that slow us. Right? Because if we are slowed, but they're still burning at the same rate, okay. Stuns don't matter. Yes, I'm not hitting you right now, but you're burning. Right, so that there's a lot of utility we get out of these ignites. So and not necessarily out of our hits, which might become kind of unreliable. Critical Strike Affliction. Well, we have to deal crits to get enough flash charges. So 83% is huge. So we have to just apply one of these big ignites once every 4 seconds. For flash charges, but also the duration of ignite is 4 seconds. So this might be really good damage output. Again, green socket. The skill itself is a green socket. Ignite Proliferation, awesome for convenience, also does some damage. Blue socket, Combustion. Could be an option. I don't think I wanted to show Combustion here. It's the other one. Immolation. Immolation is kind of the same effect as Ignite. It's just a bunch of added damage against burning enemies. Because we're really counting on having to hit people twice once we go into Burning Arrow anyway, might be really good. This may still be great, fine. For red sockets, elemental damage with attack support. It's good. It's better than burning damage, which it's like pretty much identical to burning damage. Right, so we have a bunch of different options for gems. We have some reds, we have some blues, we have a bunch of greens. So corrupted items might be fine just because we have the ability to be very flexible in our gem selection. Right, there's more options out there as well, like added damage options or things like that. Alright. And the last thing I want to talk about is POE, TW, bow. Is to talk about bow mods. And this really goes for all mods. But what we care about with this type of setup is when we find an item on the ground, how much of this stuff is good for us, right? Because physical damage and accuracy, well, it's good because once we go into Burning Arrow, that's good. Physical damage, good. Is good. Fire damage, good. Cold damage, lightning damage, these two are not very good for us. Increased elemental damage with attack skills, good. Level of socketed gems, not good initially. Well, it's good initially. Not good in the long run. It's good initially when we are doing the elemental hit. Plus level of socketed bow gems, socketed bow gems. Both of these are amazing. Physical damage leech, not very good, but you know, a lot of these are not nearly as heavily weighted as the stuff up above. So a median prefix roll is just going to have 2 to 3 good rolls for us, right? Just the affixes on the prefixes are going to be good. Suffixes. Dex, not very useful. Attack speed, always great. Resists, fantastic. Case resist, also good. Stun duration, trash. Projectile speed, trash. Life gains on enemies hit by attacks, On kill, Mana on kill, Increased critical strike, increased critical strike multiplier. Both of these are very good. Accuracy rating, additional arrows. Accuracy rating. Poison, not very good, right? It's just not very practical. Bleed, not very practical. And damage over time multiplier, again, fantastic. So there's a lot of multiple mods on here that is just very good for our build. Because we have this mixture of being able to utilize the prefixes and the suffixes, right? Because we get some of our damage of multiplier, the overtime multiplier on a suffix, right? We get some of our damage multiplier from crit multiplier on a suffix as well, and then we have a bunch of flat damage on our prefixes. And this is something that really changed a lot with last Delve. Last Delve I had a fantastic time with Cold Dot. And the nice thing was that because I could fix my resists, I was able to be very aggressive in gearing damage items. Well, if you're not playing a Pathfinder or something that has a really easy time just fixing their resist with flasks, what happened is that your damage over time multiplier went into a suffix from a prefix, which is overall more powerful, right? Because we are able to get it over here. Although we would like a fire damage over time multiplier. I'm not sure we can get that anymore. That might be a thing of the past. I don't see it on here, so it's probably a thing of the past. Unless you could get it from Incur Veiled. This fire. You can get it if you got access to Veiled suffixes, which you want. So in the normal game or the Gauntlet you can use that, but in the Delve you can't. Anyway, if you already have your resist fixed because you have the flask you're using, you can get damages on your suffixes, right? And because we still need some resist, chances are that when we pick up an item from the ground, and it's like a ring, or a quiver, or a bow, or a piece of armor, we're gonna have a good chance of having good 4 suffixes. And we have a decent chance of having 5 or 6 good suffixes. Affixes. And that's kind of the benefit of this build, because we are dipping a little bit into crit. We're dipping, we're relying on damage over time multiplier. We are starting out with base damage. We have all of these different places where we can get good mods from. And I think that is really the biggest strong suit of this build. And this is why I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it in Delve, and we'll see how Delve goes. And then I might try it in Gauntlet. I think in Gauntlet it's going to be kind of silly, because a lot of the Gauntlet mods that I would be worried about, which is just really big single hits. Well, this is not really a really big single hit Gauntlet. This is a shotgun. Shotgunning is the risk. From what I tested, if you trigger your flash when you're hit, because there's no cooldown, and you get shotgunned, well, you just trigger your flasks 5 or 6 times. So if you can, if a hit does only like 20% of your life, but you're getting shotgunned 5 times, well, a lot of people would die, right? Because that's 100% of your life, and that's really unfortunate. But we'd be at the same life. Right? Just because we get 6% of our life back whenever we're hit, I guess we would heal a little bit. We trigger 4 flasks immediately for each hit. We get 24% of our life back. We might rig it to the point, like especially in Gauntlet, because of the crafting bench, you might get it to the point where and access to cluster jewels. And Gauntlet is way easier to build in a way. We might recover a whole bunch of life on hit, and we don't have to worry about shotguns anymore. It could be really good, but Delve is more fun for me. So that's what I'll be focusing on. Anyway, rares and uniques. There's some really good uniques. We're not going to find them. If for some reason we can get like the goat boots that ignites, or the ring that proliferates ignites, both of those would be amazing, but both of those are pretty much impossible to get. If you get to the point where you are converting like Pyre might drop for you, right? That's like it has some coal to fire conversion. At that point, it might be worth it to put in the coal to fire conversion, and you might have a really decent ignite elemental hit going, right? Because you're kind of doubling your damage from your ignites at the expense of your cold. Could be good. Because we are playing Delve, the chance of us getting a curse on hit ring that is usable for us is very high. Also because there's a lot of affixes that are useful for us. So, we're a lot more liberal on those things. So yeah, I think that there's a good chance that this is going to be a lot of fun to play. And I think that, I'm going to try it, but I'm sure there's going to be things that are going to be way more effective. Like just barreling down using poison concoctions or something like that, because it requires a rare item, right? Or not a rare item, a magic item, something you can probably roll relatively cheaply and keep up to date. Might be really good. But in the long run, like once you get really deep, you're gonna you may have some issues when it comes to like, okay, well now I'm trying to make my suffixes work, and I don't have a good way to leverage my prefixes. Like, because if you have rings that add damage to attacks, not that good. Crit, not as good. So there's a lot of different modifiers you're looking for, which might be much harder to get, especially knowing that you're limited without a crafting bench. Anyway, that's the recent updates. I'm pretty excited about the events. I'm looking forward to playing around with it. I'm looking forward to going back into the Infinite Delve. I have had a lot of fun with that before. And if this build does well enough, I might take it into Gauntlet. And if it does really good and there's not many changes, this might be my league starter as well, just because of the ease of gearing. And again, we're planning to just go back to these flasks, right? These 20 charge flasks, 7 charges when you're hit by an enemy, and used when it reaches full or used when adjacent. And this is like I-80 flasks. And we're using elemental hit to get that down deep enough so we can pull it off. Alright, that's it for me. Think that it's gonna be next Friday is when the delve start. I hope that some of this information has been useful of different ways to evaluate builds. Especially when it comes to like, okay, how useful is a random 5 mod item going to be for me? And, or am I going to be in a position where like, hey, I really need these 3 suffixes on an item? Well, that means that you're probably not going to have prefixes, right? Just if you need 2 specific suffixes on an item, then the odds of having an okay prefix along with it just crater, because you have no way to really craft these things. And although fossil crafting is going to be way easier than it was last time, right? Resonators are just popping out everywhere. It's still going to be quite challenging. And you're going to be happy with some pretty trashed gear. Alright. But yeah, see you guys Friday. And I'll record some updates as to how things progress.